Voter apathy and the 2011 elections. If you remember properly, INEC did commission a report about that, which they eventually presented, and that raised a lot of dust, debate, if you will, and that's what we're talking about this morning here on Sunrise Daily. And we're joined by the resident electoral commissioner in Cross River State, Mr. Mike Igini. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Yes, my pleasure to be here. Good morning.
It's interesting. First and foremost, why did INEC even conduct that report in collaboration with the non-governmental organization?
Well, I think that what the commission did is the right thing to do by any organization. In fact, self-censorship is very key to organization living up to its responsibilities. Sometimes you have done something, you want to hear the third person or the outsider's view of what we are doing. And so, beyond even that of looking at the issue about voters' apathy, there are other internal processes that we have to invite people from outside, experts, to look at what we have done, whether what we have done is wrong, because we believe that we are not the best judges of our own honesty on most matters of public interest. And that's the basis of that commission of experts to look into issue of apathy.
Okay.
It's a very serious problem in our democracy.
We'll take the report now, and perhaps the reason why that was conducted may be highlighted in this report. Just listen to it.
Criticizing the 70-page report commissioned by the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Aborishade listed shortcomings of the research findings earlier presented by lead researcher Professor Adigun Agbaje.
If we assume that apathy can be measured by voter intention, the conclusion we can draw from the presentation of the lead researcher and the research report is that voter apathy is low in Nigeria, or almost non-existent. But we all know that this does not conform to reality, to our experiences, because it was because of our experiences that they were actually commissioned to look into it.
I'm convinced that this is as scientific as we can get. We have infrastructure challenges, so that, for instance, the kind of data that INEC should have given us, because they are supposed to be with INEC, that we could not get, there was nothing we could do about it.
In the survey conducted across 12 randomly selected states and 6 geopolitical zones, 73% of the respondents adduced violence and inadequate security as major reasons behind voter apathy during the 2011 general elections. INEC, through this research report, seeks to entrench democratic stability by reducing voter apathy and ensuring good governance. But the reviewer stamped his own observations on INEC's inaction over the incessant political parties in the country.
Section 86 empowers INEC to monitor and keep records of activities of political parties. So INEC is in a position to stop these practices that may be contributing to voter apathy.
Election is a multidimensional kind of activity, and in all facets, people want to be sure that they have a say. But now the big buyers, the big giant, they've bought virtually all the political parties. How do we ensure that we get back to where we are coming from?
According to INEC, addressing the issues associated with voter apathy in Nigeria may go beyond apportioning blames, but ensuring laid out policies and interventions that would tackle the growing phenomenon ahead of the 2015 general elections.
Well, voter apathy, they say, is really high, but the report says it's low, and you saw that Mike Igini, they just didn't agree with that, and already he says no way to that report.
Well, I think that one of the hallmark of research is empiricism. And that is to say that whatever exercise is carried out in a particular environment, in a controlled environment, if taken to another environment, we will get almost the same result. So regularity is a hallmark of such research. Now, to put the point very clear here, with respect to whether the report actually captured the reality of voter apathy, which is a matter of concern to all of us, is correct or not. I will give a case of Anambra State. In the rerun elections that we just conducted, to tell you the level of, people lack of participation in the elections. We had a total registered voters, 7 local governments. Total registered about 1,769 in 188 wards. 547,756 registered voters. It may interest you, disgustingly, to hear that the total voters turnout was only 15%. 15%. And from INEC records, this is the lowest in the last 14 years. Lowest so far that we have recorded. Now, of that 15%, the winner of the election only got 7.8%.
Wow.
And the second runner got 7.4%. So how best would you describe empirically the issue about voters apathy, which what we are saying and somebody is saying is not correct? All right? You can see the kind of level of apathy. Now, the issue about voters apathy is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's a worldwide issue, a matter of concern. You recall that even in our country, in 1979, we recorded just about 60-something%. But by the time they removed the instead of invalid vote and all that, the vote came to about 45%. In 1983, we also recorded a dismal actual turnout, even though there were fake declaration of moonlight and whatever, all those things we're talking about. We're not correct. Again, if you look at in 2001, the British Electoral Commission, in the UK elections, they recorded a very dismal turnout. And that led to interrogation of the entire electoral process in the UK.
Okay.
What we just witnessed in the case of Obama, all right, was because of the historical issues involved in the election of Obama, that a black man. And so we recorded 50-something% in the case of Obama. So the question is, what are the factors? What is the response, particularly with respect to Nigeria, that we are now finding, because the whole embrace of democracy is that because it brings about participation and accountability in the process of development. Now, one of the key elements of democracy, which is participation, we are now losing it in Nigeria. So the question is, what do we now really have? Because in the case of Anambra, I just told you, but for the fact that it's an election of a simple majority, how can you really say that in a total registered voter of 547,756, only 15% turn out? What does that portend?
Well, anyway, we get into the Anambra in details, especially with regards to the People's Democratic Party fielding 2 candidates, as if there wasn't any primary to bring just 1 candidate. But from the analysis you just gave now, it shows that there's a drastic increase in voter apathy the way it is. People are a little bit worried. Now we're getting ready for some other elections, Edo State, Ondo State and all that. What can we do to avert all of this and really check it before it gets worse?
Well, Sly, I must say this here. In all the seemingly intractable crises that we are faced with in the country, and now we are now facing the issue about Nigeria not wanting to participate in elections, we must be ready to tell ourselves some inconvenient truths, because that's the only way we can move forward. And talking about inconvenient truth and brutal truth for that matter, you will find that the elections that are coming up, yes, you are going to, by projection, where, for example, we have Ondo State coming up, you also have Edo State also coming up. You can see the tempo of activities at the moment in those areas. But first, may I say this quite clearly here, that our problems right now about low voters apathy has to do with the fact that the most important tier of government, closer to the Nigerian people, which is of course the unit of democracy, talking about the local council system in Nigeria, is now below the radar of true democracy. At the moment, all these states controlled by political parties have become conquered territories of those respective political parties, such that the local government elections that is dearer to the people, because you will find out that, look at our history and all over the world, people are more interested. The woman in Kokori in Delta States, the woman in Asaba, the woman in Mubi in Adama State, they are more interested in who is a councillor in their ward. Today, you know right now that the state electoral bodies are the one responsible for the conduct of elections. And I want to say, with all responsibility, having interacted with a number of these SEAC chairmen, I want to say here that we have a great men and women that will do the kind of thing that at least people are now talking about with respect to INEC. But the question is, are they free?
Why?
The state SEAC, are they independent? So what now happens is that we now have a country.
Why are they not independent? The State Independent Electoral Commission.
By name. You see, when you want to determine the independence of an organization, you must look at it from the point of view of funding. How free? Unlike INEC today, first line charge. Do you hear any problem about funding? Of course. Prior to the 2011, INEC had serious problem. You saw Professor Maurice Iwu, who was always going cap in hand to Aso Rock prior to 2007 elections. Part of the problem that led to the challenge of this country with respect to 2007 election had to do with the fact that the funds for INEC were not released by the then president of the country. And that was why Iwu, the commission, had serious problem, because midnight we saw them begging for money. So with respect to the state, because we are trying to trace the problem of apathy in Nigeria.
Exactly.
Now you find out that at the state level, how many states have conducted local government elections in this country? Because the build-up, democracy is an exponential process. It starts from the locale. And that's why in America I said, all politics is local. To what extent is our politics local in Nigeria? That is the issue we must begin to look at, fundamentally and frontially.
Does urbanization have anything to do with it? Because, you know, the other countries that you've compared Nigeria with, if in terms of development, some people will say that we're not exactly on the same development level. So does development, say the level of development, have anything to do with it, in the sense that, is it the more developed the people are, the less likely they're going to be interested in what exactly goes on in politics? Or, you know, what role does urbanization have to play?
Our problem, yes, urbanization will come to that. But Mark, we are talking about voters' apathy.
Exactly.
And to reduce it to the cost level. Why is it that people are no longer involved in, why do we have a total of 547, and we have only 15% turning out?
That's also very important. Good. In the sense that, you know, yes, also people who are supposed to be educated, graduates, the elite, as it were, most times people say they just sit at home and watch TV and never go out to vote. So what level, I mean, what exactly does urbanization or development, or is it elitism, as it were, have to play? What role does it have to play in voters' apathy?
Good. First, maybe I take that first. Look, the problem we have today, the most committed people to the Nigerian projects, the most people that have been so faithful to this country, remain the common people. For all the challenges we went through all through the period of election in this country, it is the common people that you see on the sun, under the rain, to vote. But the elite you refer to, they whether tune up to Channel television to be watching yourself, watching Chamberlain making all the analysis, or to tune on to CNN to know what is going on in the day of election. But the issue here is this.
But that should not be, you know,
which
prohibited.
Is very wrong. Now,
that should not be prohibited. What is wrong with that?
Yes, something is wrong, because we are talking about parties. I'm just saying that on the day of election, they will not go out. They want to know the outcome of the election by the common people, how they have been on the queue to vote. But talking about voters' apathy, is a serious issue. I am saying that the council election, local government election today, we cannot talk about true election in those areas. Because, in fact, for several years now, if you look at Section 7 of the Constitution, it said the system of local government by democratically elected council is hereby guaranteed. I don't see the reason. I don't know why the Senate, they are still allowing money to be paid to local government in Nigeria, where we have what we call caretaker committee. Caretaker committee is an aberration. So you find out that the moment democracy is not taking place at the grassroots level. The issues about election involving State House of Assembly, National Assembly, governorship, which are further away from the presidential elections, that are far away from the people, will not be meaningful. So right now, you have a situation where in our country, how many senators could tell you today that under true democracy, the councillors in their wards, under their jurisdiction, in their senatorial district, or the State House of Assembly men, that it was actually through a popular process that came on. It is the governors, let me tell this here, it is the governors that will determine who will become a councillor. It is the governors who will determine who will become a local government chairman, because they will now have a list, all right? At best, our honorables, or those who are also key stakeholder players, they will have to go through the governor to say, I want X number of this person to be a councillor in my area, for him to be shortlisted.
Can't INEC do anything about this? Can't they recommend to the National Assembly?
See, we had a meeting in Anambra State. INEC is very concerned, because I must say this here, whatever that Nigeria is celebrating, whatever we are doing today in INEC, that people are now saying, oh, there's now a marked departure from what used to happen. It is not sustainable. It has no foundation, because the foundation of any democracy anywhere in the world, it has to do with the grassroots. And we are saying that there's already a disconnect, there's already alienation. The people are not involved. It's only in Lagos State now, at least standing as a trailblazer, without prejudice to other states where we will now have local government elections. It's only in Lagos now that at least other political parties could win election at the councillorship level.
Even though there were still complaints.
Yeah, even they were still complaining. Even the one we are doing, I did not complain, they are complaining. But you find out that Chamberlain, that you ask the question, why is it that as popular, as dominant, relatively speaking, at least one or two or three political parties are in terms of where they are controlling the state they are controlling, how come that whenever they are doing local government elections, that no other political party could win at all? It's only INEC conducted elections that you now see a reflection of a multi-party system in the country. And that is dangerous, because the root of our democracy, the foundation of our democracy, has to do with the councillorship system.
What was the outcome of your meeting?
Right?
What was the outcome of your meeting?
Now, in that meeting, it was clear, because you will find that you have great men who are chairpersons of the state electoral bodies. But it is the governors that will determine when the election will hold. Today, it is not the President Jonathan that will determine
when the same fault with INEC. Because, for instance, I want us to also talk about Anambra. You went there, INEC went there to conduct the elections, and for the first time, we're getting to see two candidates from one political party. But you went ahead with that particular elections.
Fine. You see, information is knowledge, and knowledge is power. No man's opinion is better than information. And so I will inform you now. INEC, as a body, saddle responsibility to conduct elections. By virtue of Section 31 of the Electoral Act, we deal with candidates and not aspirants. There's a difference between aspirant and a candidate. Under Section 87, you talk about aspirant, people going through nomination processes. Now, the moment you go to Section 31, a candidate will have been defined. And the candidate is the person who had the majority vote, in the primary conducted. With respect to Anambra State, it was election conducted by the order of courts.
That's a valid primary?
Yes. No, not talking about primaries now. Or maybe we'll separate it this way. Prior to the election of 2011 National Assembly elections, there was a crisis about primary who was actually the candidate of the party. Between Senator Andy Uba, Honorable Oka Chukwu, all right, and some other persons who were challenging who was the actual candidate. Now, as I speak to you, that matter, unfortunately, regrettably, shamefully, is still even in court since last year. Now, as at the time INEC went to go to the election, it was based on the fact that the candidate of the ABGA challenged the outcome of the election, not primary now. And so the court ordered that the election should be conducted within 90 days. Between Andy Uba, Chuma Uzeribe of the ABGA, and all other 10 political parties. Now, When I was asked to move to Anambra State, and I called for a stakeholders meeting on a Sunday, which was a day before preceding the elections, and I was told about people campaigning, and I said, look, in Nigeria, without prejudice to whatever may be the outcome of a suit between the Okachukwu and Anduba, under Nigerian law, we don't have a room for independent candidacy. At best, somebody may be campaigning for his political party. So even at that meeting, the other contending aspirant was not even in that meeting. So it was not a case of two candidates, because that would be a total misconception. You cannot have two candidates carrying one particular. In any case, the court was very clear as to who was the candidate in that election, subject to what happened at the Supreme Court. So that was respect to Anambra. But fundamentally, there's a major disconnect, and he asked a question: what was the outcome of our interaction with them? It was clear to us that some of the greatest and finest men that you also find in our society, all right, that we will do better than what some of us or our own system have done, we find them in the state electoral bodies. But the question is, are they free? They are not free. A number of them confided in us that, look, even when they wanted to conduct local government elections, a governor will call and said, you cannot do it, you will do it next year. And that is why they introduced aberration, what is called caretaker committee, research of several of the constitution. There is no provision for caretaker committee and all that. And that's why I'm saying that the National Assembly should be mindful of what is going on, that they should not allow money to be sent to local government where we have caretaker committees. Because the constitution says a system of local government by a democratically elected council is hereby guaranteed.
Two aspects you just actually put forward now, so that we can actually see if we can solve all of this voter apathy. First, grassroots politics, which is very key
it's
here.
Out at the moment.
And you say at the moment it's completely out. How can we bring it back? Because the other time we were talking about this same apathy here on this program, and we realized that when your votes also don't count, it creates apathy.
Absolutely.
So how can we actually bring back all?
By virtue of Part 1 of the Electoral Act.
Now we're talking about the grassroots.
The grassroots now.
Yes.
We have what we call a multi-stakeholder responsibility with respect to issue about civic education and voters' education on the part of INEC, the political parties. Now, to address that crisis that we're having at the moment, we have to look at the state electoral bodies again. It is, for me, it should be freedom time for them. The kind of status, the kind of what INEC is enjoying at the moment should be extended to them in terms of their funding. Their funding should not be at the whims and caprices of the governors, because governors have become more powerful in Nigeria. They claim power that they don't even have at the moment, with the consequence that today we're having a serious crisis. So we need to look at the SIEC again. The SIEC, as they were presently constituted, are they truly independent to do the kind of thing that INEC is doing at the moment? The answer currently is no. The answer is no. Why is it that when they conduct the election in other part of the country, it's only INEC conducted elections that you can see a reflection of multi-party system in Nigeria? So it's very key. 2, issue about primaries. Primary processes is very key. You see, people are alienated. For example, a councillor that the committee people say, look, this man, he has not done anything. We don't want to see him again. But what happens? A governor will now write his name on the list. So why do you expect people to come out and vote? Because first and foremost, there's no popular emergence of candidates.
Mr. Igini, you know...
And that's the job of the political parties. As an oversight function.
Mr. Igini, we're already running out of time. Just a quick question. It seems most of the recommendations are out of the purview of INEC. So,
absolutely.
So there is almost nothing that INEC can do about voter apathy. What was the essence of the report?
You see, listen, I gave you an example.
Yes.
About a major disconnect.
Yeah.
You find out that people are more interested in participating in, you see, some of the people who are participating in conducted election are not supposed to be there. People ordinarily would have gone to councillorship, local government elections, and no longer involved there. Their starting point now is the one conducted by INEC, because that is where you see at least a major semblance, of neutrality, of independence, at least since 2011, given our peculiar history of what we know. So it's not as if it's outside the purview of INEC. As I speak to you, INEC as a body, we are interrogating the processes. We also want to know how our procedures will also become more voter-friendly so that there will be increased participation. Because sometimes, I mean, we have a country where we do, at the moment we do what we call accreditation between 8 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Now, the entire economy is shut down. Are we the only people conducting election in the whole world? The answer is no. So we want to see how we have breached our procedures, for increased value, but more voters friendly. And in any case, we are taking voters' education to the doorstep because we are worried about the current generation. Because who are our role models right now? People who are supposed to be in prisons, they are now our role models. We celebrate all manners of characters in Nigeria. Our value pyramid is upside down. Dishonesty is on top. And so what we have decided to do, because Alexander Pope in 1776 declared that the root cause of political corruption is the beginning of all forms of corruption. And so we are taking our education to the grassroots, to the secondary school level at the moment. And beyond the fact that we're also going to be making proposals to the National Assembly that in the universities, you must have what we call a GS program on issue about voters' education, election procedure, just as you have in South Korea. In South Korea, do you know how they see elections? Election is the period to determine the individual freedom of South Koreans.
All right.
And that's the kind of thing we must do here. So that when we have this clear-cut procedure, we have electoral bodies well-funded, well-staffed with professionals, and well-motivated. Because one of the things that people don't talk about is that, do you know that those who work in all these electoral bodies, the kind of thing they earn, you will not believe it. That they are given sensitive position. So the society itself must look at our reward system. Our reward system breed corruption. That I can tell you, as somebody who have seen the kind of thing we have seen in the system. So I think that the issue about voters' apathy is a key issue that must be addressed. But the root cause of voters' apathy, there is a major disconnect. The local government system in Nigeria, local government elections, councillorship election, chairmanship election are serious albatross in dealing with the issue about voters' apathy.